Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Good afternoon and welcome to Collaborative Connections radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Lorenzen, and we're coming to you live from the Phoenix Business Radio X studio inside Max 6 in Tempe, Arizona. I am excited to have three amazing people with me in the studio today. I can't wait to introduce you to. So with that, we'll jump right in. Welcome all of you. I know most of you can't see us, but you can hear us. So Amanda, I'll have you start. Tell us your name, business, and a passion you have.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. My name is Amanda Schneider. I am the executive director with Amplify Voices, a new nonprofit. I am extremely passionate about, I would say, any activity, action that helps bring more compassion into the world. I think we need so much more compassion. And if what I'm doing is aligned with that, that's my happy place.
Oh, I love that. Tell us about Amplify Voices.
Absolutely. Yes, our mission is actually to discover, develop, and amplify voices of people in communities who have been historically silenced, misunderstood, and oppressed for the purposes of bringing more compassion and understanding to the world. So it is a speaker development program with a twist, I guess. We're geared towards bringing more uplifting, positive voices to the world around us.
I love that. And what are the typical clients of yours or people you serve?
Right now, we are working exclusively in the community of survivors of trafficking and sexual assault. So any woman who has been touched by trafficking or sexual assault is who we're working with currently. As we grow and expand, we'll be moving into other communities, but that's what we're focused on right now.
Oh my gosh, so powerful. So I cannot wait to hear more. I'm going to move on for a second to our next guest, Michelle Jones. Thank you for being on the radio show with us today. Tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Thank you, Kelly. So my name is Michelle Jones. I am one of the founders of Trauma Integration, LLC. And the work that we do, I'm the lead educator. And what we do primarily is educate people about trauma, about their own trauma response. And then the other part of the work that we do with education is we prepare existing coaches or people who would like to become coaches to be able to work with trauma in a really positive way and help people to move through that by mindfully connecting to their own body's response so that they can move forward and move through that trauma response. So I kind of split my time. I have about half of my time is my work as the lead educator, and the other half of my time I have my own coaching practice where I work with clients as well.
Clearing trauma and healing all of the old past. It's such important work. And it started only a couple, 5 years ago ish, with only 2, I think, in the whole valley, right? And now there are how many?
So as of right now, I'm not going to include those that are still in their mentorship portion because there's a portion of the training where they need to work through some sessions with clients. But right now we have 12 practitioner coaches in 5 different states.
So nice. It's so nice to have that spread as much as we can to have people learn about that. I can't wait for you to tell us all about that. And Tristine, thank you for being on the show. Welcome, and tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me. My name is Tristine Bogle, and I am a registered dietitian. And I just started, I'm the owner and founder of Good Habits Nutrition. So my passion really is to, like both of you, is to help people and really just meet people where they're at. And, we're not perfect. We live in a messy world. And how do we fit in our health and make changes to improve, a variety of health conditions? how do we do that in the world that we're living in? So that's my goal, is to help people that way.
So, and now you know why I brought you all together.
I love it.
I always build each show around a client and nonprofits in the community and organizations and associations, because I believe the more we work together, for the greater good, we can elevate humanity, just like the conscious capitalism Arizona says. Tristine, tell us a little bit more about the clientele you serve, right? Nutrition is for everybody, but is there a particular reason why somebody would, decide all of a sudden, I really need to, decide to work with my healthy habits or not?
Yeah. Gosh, I have patients and clients come in for a variety of reasons. Often we get referrals from doctors. And so they see a doctor and have blood work done. And oh my goodness, my cholesterol is high, or I'm on the border of diabetes, or I'm diagnosed with diabetes. Sometimes it's overweight or obesity, or maybe they're just having some GI issues, food allergies, intolerances, kidney disease, disordered eating. So, a variety of reasons. And I think for the most part, usually there's some sort of trigger, right? They just realize my health actually matters and I'm ready to make a change. And so they come and see me.
Oh, I love that. There's a trigger for everything, isn't there? We live in a world that prevention is key, but it doesn't often happen, right? We always wait until there's that trigger that says, I have to, I'm in overwhelm. I have a traumatic, episode currently that brought up the past, I have, oh, great. Now I have diabetes. Now what the heck do I do with it? Amanda, how do people typically come to you or decide what's the trigger for people to work with you?
Actually, we are in our building out our full methodology. So we're relatively new in inception. So we actually just got started in January with 7 speakers. I was actually one of the original speakers, and we went through a 90-day speaker development program where we ended up main stage speaking event the end of March. And we started showing our talks to other people that wanted to watch them. And something that became very clear was other women started coming forward saying, I have a story. I want my voice heard. And so that led to the creation of speaker circles. And so we are kicking off our very first speaker circle next week. It is a group of 7 women who have come forward after watching the original talks that we gave. And they're going to go through a 30-day program together. Very small, safe space, intimate circle, virtual. And then at the end of those 30 days, they'll actually deliver their message of triumph and transformation through their experiences to their group. They'll turn around, find another sister who has been touched by sexual assault or trafficking, bring them into the circle and be their buddy for the 30-day process. So we're not quite all of that a long story to say, we're not quite at the stage where people are actively coming to us. We're getting our, what we do out there. And it's going to be very organic growth to begin with. But sadly, we know statistically 1 in 3 women have been touched by sexual assault at the very least. And there are a lot of women out there. And I personally found, significant transformation, and for my self-healing in going through this process of being able to speak powerfully from a place of triumph over my circumstances and be seen and heard. And we just really want to get that empowerment and transformation out to as many women as possible. So,
Amanda, I love that so much. For our listeners that don't know my voice yet, this is Michelle, but I just love that so much in the work that I do with people with trauma. I have found that there is so much power for people to actually own their experience and to speak. I mean, it's kind of amazing to me. And this was my experience for sure, coming through my own trauma experience, but I was astonished at how powerful it felt to actually put words to my experience and to speak them myself and to say it out loud, because there's so much of what we experience in that realm, because part of my experience was also with sexual assault, that takes our power, because in that moment we're powerless. But yet to use our voice in that way, it's like we're reclaiming part of our power. So I could not love any more that work that you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you. And 100% agree with that. I had a very similar experience as well. It's claiming back your power.
No, I love it.
How did you get into the work, Amanda? It sounds like you were a survivor of some sort. So how did that start?
So for me, I've had a couple experiences, but most recently I was actually at a business conference about 5 years ago, and luxury resort, mom of 3 little boys at home, went to a business conference and somebody slipped a drug in my drink. And I woke up 6 hours later actively being raped. I was so shocked at the time because I was a 40-year-old mom, and I had always thought those date rape drugs were for 20-year-olds out partying at clubs. And so I very quickly was sharing it on social media for the sake of, hey, this is out there, this can happen to you. So I've been vocal about it from the start, which I know so many women are not. There's so much shame associated with it. I was horrified at how many women came forward because I shared my experience. I gave them permission to share their experience. And for many of them, they had never shared it with anybody before. So I always had this sense that, maybe this is what I'm meant to do in life. I had never quite found what I was like super passionate about. And just circumstances happened. Deb Shapiro, who is the founder of Amplify Voices, had been speaking with a friend who she realized after knowing her for many years was a survivor of trafficking. And she said, oh my gosh, you have to tell your story. And she said, no, I won't. And there's so much silence about it. That sparked the idea. Deb started this, hey, I want to put together this speaker program. She'd been doing DebX, speaker development training for business people. She wanted to do this for a themed event. Facebook friend knew I had an experience. She connected us, and that's just what started it. And I got to the end of it, and I told Deb, I said, I am so aligned, spiritually with the mission of Amplify. I'm sorry, but I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me.
I love that.
Here we are down the road. So
I love
That's
that. Oh, I've had so many experiences with clients with the same thing. Like, okay, I love your, what you're doing in your business or your nonprofit so much. I'm going to, for nonprofits, I'm just going to give you my money. Just keep going, like
yep.
How much money. I always say I wanted to be a philanthropist when I grew up, so my husband's like, you kind of have to make money to do that. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll make the money so I can give it away. But to be able to empower nonprofits to do that, to be able to now give back to clients, to say you are doing something amazing and you deserve to be successful at it, because the trickle effect, right? So your trickle effect of this happened to you, which could have been, is, and probably was the worst thing that happened to you. But, the silver lining is, oh my gosh, I found what I was meant to do. And now all those people, and sharing it out loud. Karen Nowicki, the owner of Phoenix Business Radio X, is very vocal about, about her stuff. And she brings people then in like that, right? We were talking about that the other day, like what's all these people that we've touched and all the lives that, are connected because of being able to share that, and saying that out loud is so, so powerful and so neat. Tristine, when you have transformations in clients and patients, I'm sure it feels so good to have them come out the other side. What's the struggle? What's the struggle when they come to you?
Gosh, a variety of things, but I will say often they come and sometimes they're ready to make a change, and sometimes they come kind of like, I don't really want to make a change in my life, and my wife made me come, or my son made me come. And so seeing them walk out and know and say to me, gosh, I really didn't want to see you today. I wasn't ready to make changes in my diet and my health. And they walk out and say, but I can do this. I can make these 3 little changes. And, this is, maybe it's baby steps, maybe they're big steps, but just to see them walk out and happy and ready to make a change when they came in and not really necessarily wanting to. So yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes,
I'm not sure
you
if I answered
did.
your question.
Michelle, I'm sure you get that a lot with at least the client part of side of it. I know Julie, your partner, always gets like they say, oh, I don't want to come see you, but then
well, exactly, because the kind of work that we're doing, you're actually being willing to connect to something that before you were not willing to connect to for whatever reason. Right. And so I always joke, but it's not a joke. Like anytime it's my turn to sit in the chair, my palms are sweaty. Like this is always going to be work, but I'm sure that what gets people through this is the same thing that you find in the work that you do. We have hope. Like I wouldn't be here if there wasn't some hope that this process is going to fundamentally make things better in my life as I move forward.
Right. Exactly. So true.
I'm sure with you too, it's the same thing why you decided, I assume, to share your story is there's that, like, this is going to be really scary, but the hope that you can touch somebody else's life with it.
Absolutely. It's that stepping into that vulnerability and that space of fear for the greater good and to make that difference. And I can see that with each Tristine and Michelle here as well. So yeah,
I was thinking that I forgot part of my assignment at the beginning and I didn't share the passion part for me, but part of my passion is for sure the hope that I can see comes to people, that transformation. It's not uncommon for people to come and feel very discouraged, very despairing, even to feel kind of broken or like, you know what, this is just what it is. I've been through these terrible things. I've tried everything. And I guess I guess this is just the way it is. I guess this is just who I am. And kind of like, almost like the end of my story has already been written. And so one thing that I love in the work that we do is we get to help people to recognize that, yes, this is part of your story. This is part of your experience, but that doesn't mean that this is where your story ends. Like there is still so much road ahead here. And we have all the reason to be hopeful where you can go from this point forward.
Absolutely.
Passions are huge in all the work we do. I can tell. It makes it easy to wake up every day and go to work, right? When you have something and it's, yes, we can say hope, but we already know, it's life-changing, the work that we do for people. And it's so easy to then get up in the morning and be able to I get so excited Monday morning. I'm like, I cannot wait to get in my desk. It's so good for that. What about you, Tristine? Passion? How did you get into nutrition? What's the passion that drives you?
Gosh, I always loved nutrition and learning about it, even since I was young. I think at a really young age, I realized that what I eat makes a difference in how I feel. And so through the teenage years and adolescent years, I think I struggled myself with some sort of disordered eating. I think many dietitians do, and that's why they move into nutrition. And that's kind of where I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand it and not be so worried all the time about what I'm eating and be able to pass on that knowledge, but then also some behavioral changes and things that people can do to not be so worried all the time about what they eat. So to help them, but not for people to become overly obsessive of it. So that's really what got me into nutrition. And then when I started in dietetics, I actually worked in the school lunch program. And community nutrition programs. And my job really was to make sure that healthy food got out to kids and families who were food insecure. And I didn't realize that that was such a problem in the United States. I mean, I had no idea. And so I worked for a long time trying to make food more accessible, healthy food more accessible. And that was amazing work. I really loved working with those programs. But then, and I still have a contract with the state as well, doing the Department of Aging and Adult Services also. So they have community programs and senior centers throughout the state that offer meals to the aging population, which is same work, but different ages. But about 7 years ago, I just decided that I worked more in this global level before, and I really wanted to work more privately with people individually. And so that's what moved me into private practice. I feel like my strength is empathy and understanding, often, like I mentioned, trauma or some sort of, it's interesting that we're all together, but often there's some sort of trigger that makes people change the way that they eat and maybe, not have the healthiest habits. And so I wanted to be that safe place for people to come and talk to me about how they can make those changes. And, maybe they need the education, but lots of times they just need the motivation and somebody to talk to. So that's where I started.
Oh, I love that. It's so like growing up all, as a kid, I mean, how long, does a person go before they decide, that they're like going to eat healthy? Some people it's 18, right? Some people it's probably 70. So it's like how, to be able to change that. And by using your voice, by using, clearing that old trauma, and working through it and having somebody that's been there and that can say, no, this is going to be okay. We have tons of ways to help you. They, just putting one foot in front of the other is going to make a huge difference for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tristine, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you found that people are often like disconnected from their bodies? Do you know what I mean by that in terms of like being tuned into their hunger cues or just even kind of recognizing what their bodies are needing?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because the problem with nutrition is that there's so many experts out there with nutrition. And so they hear, oh, you have to, drink this shake every day and you'll be healthy. And, oh, you really shouldn't eat this time of the day. And you should.
There's a lot of rules.
There's a lot of rules. And so people come to me and they're like, I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to do because I have been told I'm supposed to do this, but then my doctor says I do this. And then my friend says I should drink this. And so they don't even know what it feels like necessarily to be hungry and to listen to their bodies. Exactly. That's one of the main things that I work with my patients with and clients with is how to be mindful and recognize when you're hungry. They say, gosh, I'm so, I had a patient who was like, I'm so hungry at 4:00 and I know I'm not supposed to eat at 4. And I was like, why can't you eat at 4:00? If you're hungry at 4:00, then, have a snack. There's no rule that says you can't eat at 4:00. And so that, to overcome that, I think that's definitely a challenge that I face with the majority of my patients for sure.
There's so much information, overwhelming amount of information out there about it, right? Yeah. And the opposite, I assume, is true about sex trafficking and the sexual assault piece. It's probably eye-opening every day for you and your team to hear these stories and like, why isn't this everywhere? Why isn't this on the news every single day? You know what I mean? Because people need to know about it.
I walked into this in January. Out of the 7 speakers, I was the only one coming from experience of sexual assault. The other 6 original speakers, were survivors of sex trafficking. And I walked into it with my preconceived idea of what sex trafficking was, that I got from the media, that I got from, all sorts of things. And I thought I knew what it was, and I had absolutely no idea. And that's why what kind of the extra passion that came from me through this process was seeing the power of a story, not somebody educating, not statistics, not numbers, not, but a human being standing in front of you, giving a very authentic, vulnerable experience. And the compassion and understanding that that can bring forward. And if you can imagine, hundreds or thousands of those powerful, uplifting, stories getting out there to educate, I believe we can just all rise together with that. But yeah, it's, there's a lot of unknowns out there that, I thought I knew and I just didn't. In working with these women, they're incredible. And the resilience of people, like a couple of the speakers have their own nonprofits, and just seeing what they've come through and what they've done with their lives after dealing with their trauma. And it's just so incredibly inspiring and such an honor to be able to work with them and perpetuate those messages. So.
I love that. And myths, right? There's so many in all of our industries. There's so many myths. So we're going to do a few myth busters. I know I didn't even tell you that ahead of time. I'm going to throw it out there. Okay. So you get to start, since you're talking about it already. Sex trafficking. When you say you didn't even know, because of the media, right? To me, sex trafficking is so hush hush and nobody talks about it. But I have heard of people, but nobody, in my direct circle. Can you give us, what the norm is of what people think it is, and then what you're actually hearing from all these people?
Myth that, there are a lot of people that enter or are taken into sex trafficking are done through kidnapping, violent measures, all sorts of things. Reality. Most are boyfriended in, which is a very lengthy process. They're groomed over months, and it's a very psychological process. And, when you hear about some of these experiences, I mean, for me personally, when I look back on my teen years, I was just a step away. I was a prime victim. Could have very easily gone into it. So that was a huge myth for me. And then the second one, I would say, I used to think that most of the prostitutes, paid for sex workers out there were there by choice. I would say the vast, vast majority are trafficked and are there by coercion and force. So.
Oh man, I just have chills. My whole body has chills. I can't even fathom, but somebody has to do the work, right? I would cry every day. And somebody has to help these people. And I'm so thankful for you to be able to do that for them. And Michelle, I could never do the work you and Julie do because I would cry literally every day for that too.
Well, that's so funny. In my former life, I was a pediatric nurse. So that's where I started my career. And I often would hear people tell me that too, like I could never do what you do. And I think part of it is the mindset, which is I'm here helping, like, because of the work that we're doing, they're going to leave here better than when they walked in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the joy comes in to the work. As far as the myths go, I would say one of the kind of myths, I kind of joke that, like, if there's a Pinterest quote about something, that there's a fair chance that it actually is like a way oversimplification or just flat out wrong, in terms of like the little snappy quotes, right? And so the little snappy quote that I'm going to give us today is time heals all wounds. And I think that that's a big myth. I think that there's absolutely healing that comes, but it's not just the passage of time that will do that for us. I really leaned in hard to that, hoping that that was the case for me, right? Like, I've moved on, I'm doing other things, and I'm not looking back. I'm just going to plow ahead. And there came a point where that path was no longer sufficient because it was creeping in. And the reality was I was still carrying that trauma response within, even though I was moving forward in so many successful ways in my life. And I have met people that are almost 90 years old that are still carrying trauma from their childhoods. And so it's not simply time that will heal our experiences.
So don't say that when somebody dies, right? I mean, don't say like time will heal all, because it's the trauma response, your body. So give the, people who don't know about this, about the trauma healing, the trauma response that happens when you experience something severe.
Sure. So like in the moment of a crisis, whatever that is, we have this response in our body where our brain and our body just shift in that moment. This isn't what we pre-planned. We don't have a plan for this. So our brain goes into survival mode. It's a form of shock, fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Those are some of the common ways that people will respond in that moment. And because of the way that the brain is activated, it's not processing the experience in the way that it would normally. So all of this information that's being taken in that moment of shock, all the physical sensations, the emotions, and this one's really important, the beliefs that we form in that moment, all of that remains with us until we are able to mindfully connect to it and process it. And so that is the piece that we are able to help people do. And the amazing part, like to me, this is the beautiful part. I am not the source of healing for anybody. People have that within themselves. People, like, I think probably takes me into my second myth, which would be that people think that trauma breaks them, that they come in and they feel like they're broken because of their experiences. But I think really sometimes what trauma does is it makes it so that we don't have a clear picture of ourselves anymore. We've got all this kind of debris that stands between us and our true selves now, because at our core, I believe that we are all capable and resilient and full of light, and that given the right support and resources, we can reconnect back to that.
Oh, I love that. And another myth is that, talk therapy, like you said, time, these things, we need all the things, right, to help us heal. And one thing that I had never known about until a couple of years ago when I started to work with Julie is trauma healing is actually going back and going to that traumatic moment. And trauma can be anything from when you were a little kid, and your mom dropped you off at kindergarten and you didn't think she was coming back, to death, to sex trafficking, to, you guys see the whole gamut, huge variety. And to that little kid, it was traumatic, and so if you don't clear it, now that I'm so aware, so hyper aware, because I've been through all of it, I can pick the trigger that did it, that puts you back into that moment, and you're like, oh, no, that's a trigger. You know what I mean? Then you're like, okay, I got to go I got to come see you guys again because,
yes, because I think part of the point that we miss when we are doing sort of traditional talk therapy is the physical part of it that is within our bodies, which is part of why I asked you, Tristine, about if people feel disconnected from their bodies, because that's one of the things that I've observed is that people are so often when they've experienced significant trauma, they just disconnect from their bodies because it's kind of painful to be connected to a body that's holding all that.
Absolutely. Or they try to control something in their lives and they control that by what they're eating or how they're exercising, or, I'm sure, and there's other things, drugs and sex and all the things, but figuring out that way to control, often it's food.
Yeah.
So,
well, and children, if you have a child who's in an abusive home, often food is like one source of comfort that they can find.
Absolutely.
In that kind of setting, they don't really have access to other things to comfort themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So your turn, Tristine. Mythbusters for her nutrition.
Oh gosh.
Eating.
There's probably so many.
There's many.
Healthy living.
So I would say, gosh, the biggest myth that's out there is that you need to take away a major food group in order to be healthy. So, I grew up in the 80s, early 90s, where it was like, no fat, don't eat fat. If you don't eat fat, then you won't get fat. That was what was out there. And now it's no carbs. Oh gosh, if it's low carbs, then it's good for you. I worked in kidney disease for quite some time, and often they would, my patients would come in and think, gosh, I shouldn't be eating carbs. And protein was actually, they would eat all kinds of protein, and protein's actually really hard on their kidneys. And so it was like changing their whole mindset of, carbs actually are good for you, and here's why, and educating them. So I think any diet that's out there that tells you you shouldn't eat a certain food or a food group, that's when you want to steer clear of. If it's called a diet, you should steer clear of it. So, I mean, we call it our diet generally, but if it's a diet, then it's probably, not the way you want to live your life. So that would be the biggest myth I hear most often.
And it's so confusing because there's so much information,
right?
And a lot of it conflicts with one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you hear about, if you go into ketogenesis and now you're burning fat and that's what's better for you. But, there's short term and there's long term. And what are the health implications of doing this long term? And they're not great. And we're lacking all these nutrients. So anytime you're taking away a major food group, you're losing nutrients. And then, just your day-to-day life is harder. It's hard to go to a party and figure out what you're supposed to eat, or to go to your parents' house. They make this great dinner and you can't eat it, or a friend's house. And so, I work with so many clients and patients, just kind of resetting their mindset with, there's really not that many rules. The rules are you should have a variety in your diet and not eliminate things. There are times when people have food allergies or intolerances, and, that's kind of another subject, but typically it doesn't mean you're taking away an entire food group. So maybe just one particular food.
Yeah. Like you're saying, like the fat or the carbs or
right.
the this or the that.
Yeah.
I know
you're not taking away an entire macronutrient. So
yeah.
Right.
And you're, whatever you grew up like, is kind of what you believe in. And then you have to like self-educate, if you want to get healthy as an adult, because there are so much out there. And then you're like, okay, but like you said, like we have to pay attention to our bodies to know, can we eat it? Yes, I'm eating at 4:00, or, I can tell when my body craves sweet potato, like, okay, well then I need to eat a sweet potato. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
like if you really hone in on what your body's needing and you pay attention to it, it's pretty cool the way that it changes how you feel.
Yeah.
And present ourselves to the world, right? To be better, to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now we're going into future. Amanda, what does Amplify Voices have on the horizon?
On the horizon. Well, next year we are in communication to enter a new community and a new space. We're actually going to roll out our programming in people who have been incarcerated. We're working with the diocese and in a different state that they're very passionate about that. And then really, me personally, I'm very excited to get into the LGBTQ space, Black lives, the BIPOC community, Black and Indigenous people of color. There's just so many different areas. And we really believe that as we get more and more voices, we have very strong principles of there's no diminishment. So these talks are not, angry or negative. There's no diminishment of any person. And then there's no ego. It's about giving some message to the audience. And so if you can imagine these transformative messages coming out from these different communities that have been misunderstood, and then breaking down the walls between the communities, I'm really excited. So that's our big vision over the next years. So as we grow.
Oh, so cool. And what did you do before this?
Oh my gosh. Well, Tristine, I've been meaning to say I spent, actually, I still have my business, but I spent 10 years in the health and wellness industry. I had a, nutritional product that I was a rep for, but it got me into all of the food documentaries, and it's a slippery slope. So I've been really enjoying what you've been saying, and that's ultimately where I landed. So I've been very much resonating with that. But, my path here is, I was in the corporate world, I was a classroom teacher, and then I spent the last 12 years in entrepreneurship, various roles and different things like that. So now I never thought I would land in nonprofit, but
Oh,
Very happy
two of
here.
my favorite subjects, entrepreneurship and nonprofits. You can't get any better than that.
Yep, absolutely.
What are you still doing that work? Are you still doing some of your own work, or are you just doing the not just because
Right. That's a great question. I've been building a family communication coaching practice that I decided to set on the shelf so I could focus on this more. The other project that I work on, I'm a co-founder, one of 5 of the Women's Impact Academy. It's an online virtual community for women that we do roundtable discussions, and it's just a private community where women can come, connect, learn, and figure out what that next step is for themselves. So I'm still in entrepreneurship as well, but this is my main focus for right now. So.
Oh, when you're an entrepreneur, you're so used to wearing all the hats, right? So you're like,
yes,
yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Right. It's just
True.
another bucket.
it is.
Put it in a different bucket, right? What bucket am I working on at this moment?
Absolutely.
Michelle, what about you? Where'd you come from and where are you headed?
So before I did this work, I worked as a pediatric nurse, and then I had a couple children with some special needs. And so I was very lucky enough to be at home with them for a while, and taught myself photography because that was a really great way for me to find beauty in the everydayness of stay-at-home motherhood. So I worked as a professional photographer for a while, and then came to this trauma work kind of as a mix between recognizing how much we need more resource in the mental health community because of a couple of my kids' special needs. And then also with my own trauma journey. So that really, I'm like a super nerd. Once I learn about a topic, I'm probably going to read 5 books about it and watch a bunch of YouTube keynote addresses and, do all of the things. And so I love that I have all these different things that have brought me to this point, because I feel like it helps me to sit in a place of non-judgment and compassion with the people that I work with.
So cool. And future, what's the future holding?
So I had to make a list because I'm getting to be an old lady. So I have to try to keep all my thoughts together. So one of the things that has been really great, one of like the accidental side effects of COVID is that it pushed us to really make our training be able to be something we can do virtually. So that's probably a pretty recent thing that has brought us into the future, which is being able really to bring this information and this resource to people from wherever they're at, which I love that piece that we are not limited by just being able to travel to get that support. And everyone else feels a lot more comfortable with all the virtual technology again because of the last year and a half. The more recent thing that we're doing and that I'm really excited about is community collaboration. Realizing as we work with people with trauma, especially if people have been through significant trauma like sex trafficking or even just like extensive childhood abuse, they need more support and resources than one person. They may have never learned how to feed themselves properly, right? So they're going to need to like learn some life skills in a lot of different ways. And so I have been loving this piece of the puzzle as I've been meeting more and more people. And I just think of it as this big virtual safety net that we are creating for people to kind of fill in the gaps that may be missing because of some of their life experiences.
I love that. So Michelle and Julie are clients of mine. So we were in a brain dump, as I like to call it, session. We're like, we need to build this community. We need to have these resources. We need to, we're putting all of our heads together about how do we do this? And like, let's build a collaboration of people that we know, like, and trust. And we can say, oh my gosh, yes, I can help you with this piece, but you also need, you could really use life coaching. You could really use, they're like, they want to tell their story. Right. So we're all like, we have to do this as an event. So we started that last month, and we're going to do it again the end of this month and move forward. I told them my big vision for them is to have a place, like a building that people come to, and everybody, and everybody's there, and they can get healing for everything. They can have their nutrition, and they can have their, do everything at one place, to have that feel like, oh my gosh, I'm really healing the whole person, and I'm living my best life because of the work. So we're super excited for that community collaboration. So which is why I'm inviting you guys to meet each other, because we, the more we find people that we know, like, and trust to do business together, it just makes our job so much easier. It's really been fun for that. All right, Tristine, you're up. So where'd you come from, and where are you headed?
Well, I did kind of give a little background of where I came from with regards to nutrition, but I did want to just mention that it's so great to meet both of you, because I often will be counseling somebody who has been through trauma, and I'm usually a safe place for them to talk to. But then I don't really know where to send them. I can help them with this nutrition piece, but lots of times they can't heal, or they can't change their diet or their health or their lifestyle because something else is holding them back. So it's really great what you both are doing. And then to be able to connect with you. I'm so glad I was able to connect with you, Kelly, and both of you too, so that I can, pass on my patients.
Well, yes,
Likewise.
because all of us, as we can help each other, it just helps our client move through all of our work so much more efficiently and effectively. And that is ultimately such a win for them. It gets them to that place of hope so much quicker.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I had referred somebody to Julie, and I said, and you need to do life coaching at the same time. These are the two things. You need to clear your trauma and do life coaching. And it was, they both said, your partner Julie and the life coach both said that it was so much easier. Their work was so much easier with the client, because they were doing both, because they were healing all sides. It's just pretty cool to be able to have that, connection to make it, because then they're better for themselves, they're better for their families, they're better for the world faster, so to help each other. So we're excited to have that in the 28th is the next one. So we're excited to have that. Okay. So what's your vision? Where are you headed in the future?
So my private practice is new. It just started in August. And so
that's exciting.
Yeah. So
Very
my
exciting.
hope is to see clients and patients and just really help them. I hope to grow and have other dietitians work with me too, that have that same vision. That's really important to me, that we are there to help people and meet them where they're at, and make changes, help them make changes. So that's my goal.
I like love so much that you bring so much empathy and compassion, because I think a lot of people feel resistant to wanting to go to someone to talk about their nutrition because they're worried about being judged.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hear that all the time. A patient will come to me and they're just kind of hold back. And then by the end, they're like, oh gosh, I didn't mean to tell you all that. And I'm like, no, I'm so glad you did, because that's the only way that you'll be able to make those changes. Something was holding you back from making those health changes. And now that we're able to talk about it and you have a safe place to talk about it, then you can move forward. So yeah. So thank you. That's important to me.
Yeah. So what part of the Valley do you see clients in?
So I'm in Mesa Gilbert. My office is right on the border of Mesa Gilbert.
Nice.
Yeah. But I can, we were just talking about that before the show. Arizona's big, but it's small. So I can see,
absolutely.
I can
I love
see
that.
patients and clients from all over. The other thing too, that I was going to mention that you had mentioned is that I also offer telemed services as well.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. So because of COVID, that's one good thing I think that's come out of COVID, is that now this is normal to have these virtual meetings. And And lots of times with nutrition, it's really helpful to have virtual counseling because I can say, hey, let's go to your pantry. And they can, they can take their phone and walk to their pantry and, like, let's talk about this product or pull this out or, it's sometimes helpful. And I think people feel comfortable in that setting, to be in their home too. Sometimes with nutrition, it's really helpful to come in also. So it just really depends on the person, but it's nice to have that variety. Yeah.
If it were me, I feel like I'd want to take you to the grocery store with me.
Yeah. I actually do grocery store tours.
I love that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's so genius. I love it so much.
Yeah. I love it too. I mean, it's fun. We have fun and we go, aisle to aisle and talk about different products and, this over this and So yeah, it's fun.
So she's been a dietitian for a long time, but now new to entrepreneurship. So again, my favorite subject. So any tips from the resident entrepreneurs for Tristine moving forward? You've been in the space a while, Amanda.
I got to say, for me, collaboration and networking is huge. So just what you're doing, getting yourself out there, making connections and forming relationships with others. And finding, I used to teach referral marketing. So finding complementary businesses that you can work and partner with together that serve the same target market. And it just makes things a lot easier. And it's more fun to have somebody that you're, working with side by side. So.
Right. Yeah.
I teach that to clients all the time.
Do you?
You have to have that. You have to have your referral sources because there's no reason for you to, well, two things. One is there's no reason for you to do something that you don't like, right? Outsource it. Find a referral partner, find that help to do the stuff you do. When you're an entrepreneur, you chose to be an entrepreneur to do what you wanted to do, right? So why are you frustrated, and why are you doing all the things you don't want to do? Outsource it. just outsource it. But finding the people that you trust to do, refer to clients is huge. It's huge. It's the biggest in every business I've owned. I've been an entrepreneur 18 years. Every business I've owned, it's the number one is having those referral partners for sure.
And I think another thing too is being okay to ask the questions as dumb as you feel asking the questions. I'm moving into insurance and becoming credentialed and that's a whole nother thing. Before I would see my patients and then I just passed that on and somebody handled that. And being an entrepreneur, like you mentioned, you wear all these different hats. And so now I have to become an insurance expert. And I'm, at the beginning I was clueless. And so I would ask questions and I can tell people are like, you don't know that, but being okay to ask those questions and just be like, hey, no, I don't know that. And I need somebody to help me and give me a insurance 101 lesson or, whatever that is. So
yes.
Yeah. There's no dumb questions when it comes to entrepreneurship. Right. I tell clients, they always feel so bad, because they come in overwhelm or they come to me for, a reason because they are brand new to entrepreneurship or they're a small business owner and they're like doing too many things at once. And they're like, I know this is a dumb question. I'm like, don't say that ever again. Seriously, because every single person you get into what you're passionate about, you started a business, you started this thing because you're passionate about it. Why do you think you didn't go to school for all those other things? There's not a dumb question.
Right. And there's often those obstacles. It's like, that's kind of what, holds you back from being an entrepreneur, I think, and starting the businesses. At least that's what it was with me for a long time. I had these visions and these ideas and how I wanted to help people. But then I was like, but how do you do that? How do you actually do that? And so I'm glad I took the leap to actually do it. But it's a tough leap to make, I think sometimes.
It's almost like being willing to step into a space where you're constantly a learner.
Exactly.
I'm just always willing to learn more and step into it and ask more questions and connect with more people. For me, another piece of it that may be really specific to me, but I had to learn to use my voice a lot more and be willing to just speak up and speak out about the work that I'm doing. Like, it turns out people aren't mind readers and they don't just automatically know the kind of work that I do. You know what I'm saying? And so I remember someone saying this in a class I was taking once, like, just because you tell someone that you have a sandwich to sell doesn't mean they're obligated to buy the sandwich. But if they're hungry and they don't even know you have a sandwich, there's no way they're going to buy it from you because they don't even know it's available.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for me, that was a big step for me to realize, hey, if I don't use my voice, which I love how that intersects with the work that Amanda's doing. Like, if I don't use my voice and let people know about this work, then they have no opportunity to connect to it.
I'm a huge advocate of that. Yeah, tell your story. But I say bragging is my favorite thing to do for clients, right? Because they can't do it. A lot of times they don't feel comfortable doing it themselves, right? Let me brag about you. It's way easier to brag about somebody else than it is, so that's a way to, have the help. If you can't do it yourself, I mean, obviously, eventually you learn, like you just have to do it yourself to brag, but it's not bragging. It's like, let me tell you why this is so impactful and it's going to help you. And it's helped so many other people, because you just want that many more people to be impacted by your work.
Can I just add one more tip that's really important to me is finding, it sounds so cliche, it's totally Simon Sinek, but it's find your why, like that, but it's that inside connection to why you do what you do, and share that with people, because that's what, again, connects people to you and distinguishes you from other dietitians out there. It's that, oh yeah, Tristine has this really personal connection and that's why she does what she does. And that was another, big thing to my learning. So I just wanted to throw that in there. That came out.
Yeah.
It is. It was a big aha for me as well. Sharing your higher purpose, sharing your values, being aligned in all your, in all those things, and saying the why, and saying why you do what you do, not what you do,
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I love that so much, because I think that's, I hope what sets Good Habits apart is that we're there to be empathetic and really work individually with people with where they're at. So yeah, that's great.
Can you believe we've been talking for almost an hour?
Amazing.
It goes by so fast. All right. So for listeners, Amanda, I'll start with you. Tell us how people can get a hold of you and Amplify Voices.
Well, we do have a website that is going to be under development, though. Because we're just getting started off. So anybody that's interested in connecting with me right now, you can email contact@amplifyvoices.org. We also have social media that is coming on board, but I would say contact@amplifyvoices.org in this moment would be the best way to connect with us.
You did. You had your website and you had your social media.
I did. And I'm like, we got to get that going here. It's out there. It's just going to be developed.
So exciting. I'm so glad to have met you and connected and help you share your story. Michelle, what about you? How can people get a hold of you?
So you can find us at integratetrauma.com. And we also have an Instagram and Facebook page by the same name. And my personal website is jonesharbor.com. So those are two different ways you can find me.
Thank you so much for being on. Tristine?
You can find me at goodhabitsnutrition.com. And then on Instagram, Facebook, under Good Habits Nutrition. And I'm on LinkedIn too now. And yeah.
Thank you all so much for being on. I loved meeting you and connecting you. And I know we're all going to get to do business together and help each other raise humanity, right? And help all the people around us. Thank you so much for listening to Collaborative Connections radio show and podcast, sponsored by KLM Consulting. Do the things you love and outsource the rest. Until next time, happy connecting.